wonder what it feels like to, when you take into account the cinematic canon, your cinematic canon, how you regard its appreciation or underappreciation by folks who are literally coming up through doors that you opened.
Well, you know, I guess that doesn't bother me so much, but what does bother me is the industry writ large. You know, I'm an independent filmmaker, and when I started the Film Independent organization, which if anybody is not a member of, become a member of it. It's a really important organization and essential to the development of independent cinema. And we were all faced, there were all these filmmakers and we had all these stories that we wanted to tell. And there was no place for us in the industry at that time, right? It was a very tough industry because at that time there were 3 networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, and no studio could make a movie unless they could make a network sale, or they couldn't get it financed. If CBS didn't buy it, you couldn't get it done. So as a result, you see that the films in that era were very conservative. But me, I want to make Latino films. Spike Lee wanted to make African American films. You know, Joan Mecklin Silver, and she wanted to do immigration and women's stories. And there were all of these filmmakers, John Sayles and, you know, Victor Nunez and all of us. And we were all like Lone Rangers trying to get our movies done, right? And Sandra Schulberg had this idea, and she's a brilliant woman. And she said, she saw all this was happening, and she had done some program for PBS, which had financed Northern Lights, which is one of the first independent films by John Hansen and Rob Nielsen, and Alambrista. And so she then said, God, there's all these people. So she had this idea, which is invited us all to New York. They started an organization, the Independent Feature Project, which still exists. And her idea was, we don't have any funding, we don't have any distribution, we don't have anything, but if we get everybody together, it will create an energy that'll make things happen. Just the mere act of getting together. And it reminds me of Tolstoy's beautiful quote that is one of my mantras of my life, which is, all great ideas are simple. If evil people can come together to achieve what they want, why can't good people come together to achieve what they want? And the independent film movement that started in the late 70s and early 80s was that. We all got together. And suddenly, just by that energy and people sharing information and doing something, something started to happen. And also the economics changed because it corresponded with the coming of the breaking down of the network stranglehold on the industry and the coming of, you know, home video market, right? So you could make home video sales with
They don't know what that is.
What?
Half these people don't know what you're talking about.
You know, like VHS and DVDs, that's all gone now. It's streaming now. It's changed again, and this is going to be my point. But so there was a change in things, and also a change in a need that the American audience had to see different kinds of films. And so, you know, we got El Norte distributed. It premiered at the Telluride Film Festival and created a sensation there. And immediately we were able to sell it. And that year, in 1984, was a banner year in the history of American independent cinema because you had Testament, the Lynn Lipman film, you had El Norte, you had Brother from Another Planet, the John Sayles film, you had Stranger Than Paradise by Jim Jarmusch, and you had Spinal Tap. And they all got released that year. And they all made an impact in the box office. And I will tell you that El Norte was the highest grossing of all of those films.
Humble brag, but it's necessary.
you know, so I'm very proud of that. I have these wonderful varieties, you know, saying, you know, that our weekly grosses were better than Spinal Tap. You know, it's like El Norte #1 and Spinal Tap #2. But anyway, but that was a wonderful film as well. But so suddenly we made an impact, independent filmmakers. And then Spike obviously made She's Gotta Have It, and the whole, you know, everything started to change. And these films started to be made, and they introduced new filmmakers, women filmmakers, African, you know, Wayne Wang, Chan is Missing was another one. all, Asian filmmakers, and suddenly no one had ever seen anything like that before. And so the independent film movement made a huge impact. It changed cinema, and we need that again now. You see, because the same thing has happened now. Suddenly everybody's, getting together and they're consolidating the film industry, and now we've got a stranglehold again, and there are all the streamers, and if Netflix doesn't buy it or Amazon doesn't buy it, you're screwed. Forget it. What happens is it creates a vacuum for the independents to move in once again. And so we need to have a rebirth of the independent film movement, and young filmmakers and older every kind of filmmaker that's got a good story to tell has got to come together once again, and we've got to start a new movement. And that's what this country needs more than anything right now. We did it before, we can do it again. And in the immortal words of Dolores Huerta, who, if you don't know who she is, she is one of our greatest civil rights and labor leaders of our time. She founded the United Farm Worker Union with Cesar Chavez. She led the Great Boycott. She started the environmental justice movement by getting pesticides banned. She became the major feminist leader. I mean, she's done everything and is the last of the great civil rights leaders from the 1960s who's still with us. Because Martin Luther King and Cesar Chavez and Rosa Parks, and they're all gone now. But Dolores is 95 years old. She's still with us. And I was just with her the other night giving a fiery speech. And what was her famous mantra, her famous thing? Si se puede. Si se puede. Yes, we can, which Barack Obama used in his campaign. And she originated that expression. And so everybody, come on, let's do a clap. Si se puede. Si se puede. Si se puede. Okay. And I'm very proud to announce that Barbara Martinez, who's here, back there, and I are going to be doing, Dolores has selected us, out of all the filmmakers who wanted, to do an epic biopic drama, not a documentary, about her life. And we're in the middle of bringing that to the screen right now.
It's exciting. I can't wait to see that. I've seen her out and about for, I don't know, the last 10 years. She doesn't seem to slow down. She's fiery, and when you look at that, that old footage of her and Cesar Chavez organizing, and you see this young woman and how she's been able to keep that fire all these years. She chose the right filmmaker, because you certainly have kept that fire all these years. So thank you so much.
She's very inspiring, because we go through dark times, and we're going through a dark time right now, but when you're with her, she is totally positive and upbeat, and nothing puts that woman down. And she was beaten to death once by the police and declared dead. Mm-hmm. She was with Robert Kennedy when he was assassinated. Here in Los Angeles, that's right, because the UFW was centrally involved in getting him to win the California primary in 1968, and she was literally with him when he was gunned down. She's seen it all, very dark times, and yet she's lost none of her fire and none of her spirit. And that's the spirit that we all need now.
Amen. I wanted to ask you, and I'm so happy that you addressed this, because my reason for the first question was really about movement building, and that the core of it was, if you don't know the history, so you've just given us a bit of a film history on the start of one of the beginnings of the American independent film movement as we know it. Yeah. They had a multi-prong, but this cadre of filmmakers that you're talking about were very important. And we see the consolidation. We're back to almost a 3-network structure at this point. They're just streamers. But the idea that you have to know the past in order to move forward. Yes. So I want to talk a little bit about your past and how you came to be this long-haired hippie that we saw in there.
Oh my God, did I really wear my hair that long? I love the fact that you dug that up,
Yes,
that
Eric,
was really incredible.
But what was your trajectory to the director's chair?
Well, I'll tell you. As I said, and as I said on the clip that you showed, I was raised on the border, and I come from a border family. And as a matter of fact, that's a very common thing that people don't know, but there are many families that are on both sides of the border, and mine was one of them. And I have a lot of relatives in Tijuana, still do, and we used to go back and forth across the border a couple times a week when I was a kid, and the Mexican family would come up and visit us, we could visit them. It's just like another neighborhood, literally 20 minutes apart. but two different countries. So when you're a kid, that seems natural to you. You don't realize that it is really unusual, and the border between the United States and Mexico is the only border in the world where the first and third world meet. Think about it. And the contrast between San Diego, especially when I grew up, and Tijuana couldn't have been more graphic, because you see all the lost cities and the cardboard cities, which you see in the movie El Norte, which, by the way, we had to film with a hidden camera because we could never be given permission to shoot there. So we went in there with a hidden camera to get those shots that you see in the film of those slums. So I was raised with that, and I think that all of my films have been fueled by that experience of that cultural clash that I grew up with, bilingual, bicultural, and these clash between these two worlds, you know? And a kid, a little boy, looks at the situation, and you see the people trying to cross the border and being brought, you know, down by the immigration. And a little boy asks why. You know, why? And that's when the idea for making El Norte was born. Now, why did I become a filmmaker? That's an interesting story. My family was a movie-going family. You know, my mom and dad, they're both Hispanic, obviously, but they were both born in the United States, and my grandparents were from Mexico and the Basque Country in Spain. And so they really wanted to be American. So they would go to the movies, and my father served in World War II. And he fought in Italy during World War II. And I'll never forget going to the movies with him when I was a kid, because they made all these World War II movies. But they were always white guys. There was never a Mexican-American or an African-American winning the war. You know, and when my father was in the front, it was all Chicanos who were in the front. He'd tell you, you know, the white guys came in second. They, you know, the Chicanos and Mexican-Americans are the most awarded soldiers, more medals for bravery than any other group. And they'll tell you why. Because they put us in first. We were expendable. But when they made the movies, it was John Wayne, you know, and not us. It was painful for my father to have to see that and not be acknowledged, as you say, or embraced, or what he sacrificed for this country. But they wanted very much to be American, so we were a big movie-going family because they loved going to the movies, and so we would go to the movies all the time. And I was a little kid, little boy, and we'd go to the movies, and you'd go into the theater, and this was beautiful, your theater. Let's hear it for this beautiful theater. I mean, all right. I was like, wow, what a great place. So you go to the theater like this, and the lights turn off, get dark, and these images come up like a dream. So for me, a little boy, it was like these dream images, and I just thought that they were magic, right? So we went to see this movie, The Ten Commandments, and the whole family goes, you know, because we were a very Catholic family, so we all had to go, La Biblia, you know. So we're, which, by the way, had all the sex and violence possible. You know, the Cecil B. DeMille movies, you ever seen them? There's like sex and violence and horror until the very last minute. There's redemption at the very end, but all sex and violence up until then. And my father would say, well, you have to show that kind of thing because that's what happened. You know? Anyway, so we went to the Ten Commandments, and my grandma and everybody, la abuelita, and everybody's there, and the whole family was sitting there, you know. And, but when the Ten Commandments was originally released, it didn't start with credits or music or anything. The curtain opened, and there was a shot of a curtain, all right? And this guy walks out from behind the curtain. It was Cecil B. DeMille, the film director. And it's like a mic. And the idea was that he was live, but he wasn't. It was a movie of him. And he starts talking about how he made this movie about Moses and freedom and how man wants to be free and all this kind of stuff. And I'm watching this thing, and I go, oh, my God. And he's saying, like, and when you watch this movie, you will go to Mount Sinai, and you will go to the places where these events took place, right? And the movie will take 3.5 hours to unfold, and I hope you enjoy my film. And he walks back behind the curtain. And then suddenly the stereo sound breaks out. Da, 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 boom, boom. And up come the credits, you know. And that was the first moment where I realized somebody makes these movies. They aren't just magical dreams that happen, somebody does it. And I'm going like, oh my God. You see the pillar of fire, you see the Red Sea opening up and Pharaoh's chariots, and I went, that's what I want to do. So ever since then, I've wanted to be a filmmaker.
You're hooked. That's it. That is a good hook, for sure.
And I've been on a determined singular path since then in order to do that.
Wow. Interesting. Okay, fantastic. So you've touched on everything when it comes to making films. You're a writer, you're a director, you're a producer. You've been a mentor to so many people. You've made films in all different kinds of formats and styles. So you have La Familia and Selena and even Why Do Fools Fall in Love, which is when I saw you in Morelia in Mexico last month.
Yeah.
You even said, he's even made a black film. I mean, it's a black film. He's done it all. You were so kind. You said, I heard you kind of saying, I'm sorry I had to be the one to make this film.
Yeah.
But they called me, and I thought it would be good for somebody of color to do it. It was kind of like going to be you, or
that's right.
Or it was going to get done. But let me just say, so in your answer, I want you to tell me a little bit about which lane do you feel most comfortable? Writer, producer, director? Are they all one and the same for you? And maybe just talk a little bit about your role in those capacities on different films.
Okay. I'm going to give you a deeper answer to this question, if you don't mind, because I can give you a superficial one that was what I normally give, but given the situation,
we get the good stuff.
So you get the more profound thing. One of the things that's very influential to me in my work is, and that I really found, I was raised Catholic, but from a very early age I went down to Mexico and studied pre-Columbian civilization when I was 16 years old. And I became introduced to pre-Columbian spirituality, and pre-Columbian spirituality of the Mayans and the Toltecs and the Mexica has been extremely influential on me in my whole life. And if you look at the great spiritual religions of the world, they all have a phrase that really captures what the essence of that religion is. And with Christianity, it is love thy neighbor as thyself. That's the core. And in Buddhism, it's all is one. And those are very, very beautiful concepts. In a pre-Columbian religion, that would be make your heart your face. You take what is here within you and you put it here so that the world can see who you are. And the minute you make your heart your face, you are no longer blind. Until you make your heart your face, you're blind. But the minute you make your heart your face, you can see. And when you can see your path, which they call Olin. You find your Olin, and you know what you must do with your life. And if everybody does that, and everybody finds their Olin, then everybody who's a farmer will be a farmer, and everybody who's a poet will be a poet, and everybody who's a doctor will be a doctor. And then the society, the world, the community finds its Olin, and the world is saved. So it is dependent upon you to find your Olin. And they had no concept of monasteries. The Toltecs and the Mayans, you go to these ancient places, there are no monasteries. In Europe and in Asia, they have monasteries. You retire from life to find God. But the pre-Columbian viewpoint is, no, you find God in your life. You find God in your Olin. When you find what you are to do in life, then that is a spiritual journey. And if you're a filmmaker, then that's where you find God, is in making your movies. So for me, my Olin is I am a storyteller. So when you say writer, producer, director, to me it's all the same. It is, I'm telling a story. If I was a Cro-Magnon caveman, I would be the guy around the fire telling the story of the great hunt. Right? If I was in the ancient Greeks, I'd be doing plays in the city Dionysus. I do movies because that's the way we tell stories now. And I have stories to tell. So I am a storyteller, and I like to write and direct and then edit and do the whole process, because to me it's all part of the same process. So that is my answer to your question.
What a wonderful answer. Thank you. We'll all remember that one. Well, I want to give some time for a few questions from the rest of the family that's gathered here. So I'll just finish with, I had like 19 questions, but let me just come down to this one, which I really hope that you'll answer for us. When you look back at the young artist that you were, what is one thing that he did that you would tell every new filmmaker or artist to try? And what is one thing that you did that you would tell them to never do? Okay, I think that what I would tell somebody to do that I've learned and that I think was something that affected me, and that is that we serve the story. The story is all. And I keep this hollow bone on my desk when I'm writing, and it has from Tikal, an ancient Mayan artifact. It's an imitation of it. And it has carved on it the creator gods. And you go, what's a hollow bone have to do with creation? But the idea is that it flows through you. Like we are all storytellers and filmmakers. We're hollow bones, and the story flows through us. So you have to take your ego out, put it aside, and as a director, you try to get all the people that are working on your film, the actors, the cinematographer, and everybody, to get out of their head, get their egos out, and allow the story to flow. And that is essential to making a great film, and making a film that's going to touch and move people. So the story is everything, and you must serve what it wants. It chooses you, and it flows through you, and the more you do that, the better the work you do, the better the writing you do, the better the directing you do, and the better the film turns out. So that is what I would try to instill in people, is that kind of humility is essential and rare in our businesses, Ava knows. What would I tell them that I did do? Okay, so when I was a young filmmaker, I was more inclined to give orders. And now I learned that what my job really is to receive order from those I work with. The director's job is to take all this light that everyone is giving you, and you like a lens, you focus it. But you receive that order, as opposed to giving orders and telling people what to do. So that is what I think that my journey as a director has taught me. Wow, how fantastic. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
I wanted to reference one thing that you made reference to, talking about Why Do Fools Fall in Love, because that movie is very special to me and very, very important to me. But one of the things I try to do with my positions as a filmmaker is I really try to look at what is needed and what I can do to help, the storytelling and the country and the world with what I'm doing and the choices I make. So one that we're going to be seeing in Mi Familia, when I was doing Mi Familia, the studio, we had Eddie Olmos and we had Isai Morales and we had Jimmy Smits as stars, but in my films, the women roles are as important as the male roles, right? Because that's just my nature and the nature of my understanding of familia. So the women's roles were just as important, but at that time, there were no Latina stars, right? And so the studio is going like, well, you got to cast Marissa Tomei, or you have to cast Annabella Sciarra, all of these types, Angelica Houston. And I'm like, no, I'm not having any non-Latino play a Latino. We're going to have all Latinos in this movie. It's family, familia. They understand the culture. They get the language. I don't want to have to give somebody a course to teach them that, and they'll never get it anyway. It's got to be in your heart. I have to have Latinas. And they go, well, there aren't any. And I say, there are, they just haven't been given an opportunity. Right? Getting back to the thing I was talking about Zaide, right? Talent is universal. They're there, but they just haven't been given a chance. And that's one thing that I encourage all filmmakers to do. Always create opportunities in the movies that you make for the great talent that we have, all right? So, I'm a very stubborn guy, and they finally said, okay, Greg, you can have your way. And we cast all unknowns who had never been in a movie before for these roles. And we had these open auditions, and who comes into the audition? Jennifer Lopez. Her first movie, Mi Familia. Nobody would cast her, right? Same thing with Constance Marie, same thing with Maria Canals. They've all had incredible careers. But Jennifer, that was her very first thing. And if it hadn't been for that, hadn't been for me, now people say, oh, you made Jennifer Lopez. I go, no, I didn't make Jennifer Lopez. She made herself. I just gave her the opportunity. But unless you create those opportunities, right, nothing's going to happen. There's not going to be a Jennifer Lopez, right? She has gone on to become probably the greatest Latina star in the history of cinema. So that is opening doors. So now we come to Why Do Fools Fall in Love, and when I was working on Why Do Fools Fall in Love, what does this country need? What is Warner Brothers and Universal not doing? There's no African-American woman's voice in any films. And that's a kick-ass important voice and perspective that the country needs and that the entertainment industry needs, right? So Tina Andrews wrote this brilliant script, Why Do Fools Fall in Love, about the 3 wives of Frankie Lyman. And I loved this script. And Warner Brothers was interested in doing it because they saw it kind of like the First Wives Club. They weren't really thinking about it the way I was. But I thought this was really fantastic. And I thought Tina was brilliant. And I thought, damn it, I'm going to do this. Because if I don't do it, nobody's going to do it. And somebody has got to start opening the door for African-American women. They need to have their place in our culture and in our movie industry and in our storytelling, right? So we cast Halle Berry and Lila Rashawn and Vivica Fox. And I tell you, it was the most wonderful experience for me sitting around a table with the 4 of them, and they were all talking and riffing off each other and saying, I said, you say whatever you want to say. This is your chance. Put it out. Do what you want. And they go, really? Can we? I said, absolutely. So they start coming up with all this incredible stuff that you see in the movie, and the studio is freaking out. They're going like, you can't put that in a movie. And I say, why not? Let's do it. Let them say what they want to say. Let them get out what they want to get out, and let's have some fun with this. And let's really open this up, because not only is it dynamic and exciting and at times funny and at times tragic, but it's opening a door. So the movie was, I have to say that to this day, I have so many people from the African-American community tell me how much they love the movie, and like our friend Chaz Ebert, and that really makes me feel good. And I'm very happy that in some tiny way, some small way, I helped open the door, because it's a door that needed to be open. And then you see all the brilliant filmmakers like Ava, and I mean, just incredible movies. Casey Lyons, I mean, just incredible filmmakers. Brilliant movies that have really changed our country.
Sure,
and so, you know, I'm very happy that I was able to bring Tina's script to the screen. That was very good. And by the way, there was another alternative motive that I had in my mind when I was doing Why Do Fools Fall in Love, which I'd like to share if you don't mind. And that is, when you're in the film industry and you've got a project like it's a Latino project, African-American project, or Asian project, the studio is always talking about crossover. It has to cross over, right? And what do they mean when they say that? They mean crossing over to the white audience. They mean the white audience has got to like this movie. So you've got to make a movie that the white audience likes, right? And of course, we're all white executives, and we know. So we can tell you what's wrong with your movie about Latinos, because we know that white audience won't like it. And I'm sitting there going like, why does crossover mean to the white audience? Why is that just put in, right? So my thought was, let's develop another kind of crossover. why don't we cross over the African American and the Latino audience and put those audiences together? Because if you put those audiences together, you don't need the white audience. Right? So, you know, I realized that the African American audience loved Selena. So I went, hey, I'm going to do Why Do Fools Fall in Love? We're going to cross over. And I became very good friends with John Singleton. And we were talking about, you know, doing this project of getting the African American, doing projects that could bring the African American and Latino audience together and form a new kind of paradigm for what becomes economically viable, right? And I still think it's a brilliant idea. Okay, so maybe we could work on that together.
And I'm willing to work on it together. I do just want to say there were certainly black women filmmakers making films prior to Why Do Fools Fall in Love, but in the studio system at that time,
they didn't.
It was a big deal. Those are independent filmmakers, of course, Julie Dash,
and
Kathleen Collins.
I knew
Julie.
I knew Julie because Daughters of the Dust, and so, you know,
in a studio environment. Yeah,
but
certainly had been a
that's
studio
what
environment
I
before,
meant
but yeah.
There hadn't been any major studio film made
For a while.
And it was a groundbreaking in that sense. But yes, of course, there were many marvelous African American women independent filmmakers,
Sure.
And that was all an outgrowth of the independent film movement, which was so essential. But you know, the studios were very closed, you know, very, very closed at that particular time. And the other thing about that movie that I loved was working with Little Richard and giving him a chance to let him have his say about how he was exploited by the music industry and how, you know, the music industry appropriated his work and denied him his royalties. And we let Little Richard let loose and have his say, which he does in the movie very entertainingly, but what he's saying is extremely powerful and devastating to all of these great African American artists who were cheated.
Let's give him a hand. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nava. Thank you for the time you've taken. Extraordinary to hear you talk about your work.